So I tried to think, I was like, it's Halloween, so maybe I should, there's no Halloween-themed sermons, right? No message I can preach has to do with Halloween. So I started thinking about Halloween a little bit, and I decided I wanted to talk about fear today. And when I was thinking about this message, I started kind of combing through my memories, what little bit I can remember of my life at this point, and thinking about times that I was really afraid, really scared. And there's plenty of them that pop up, but there's one in particular that I think back on that I was probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life. And this was when I was about 9 or 10 years old. So growing up, we always went to church youth camp. Do we have any church youth camp people that have been to church youth camp somewhere? Love church youth camp. It was something I always loved going to. And when I was 9, we moved from North Carolina down to St. Mary's, Georgia. And the church camp ministry in Georgia was awesome, and I loved going to church camp. I had so many friends and even like a lot of cousins that we'd go to camp together, so we'd always have a good time and cause a lot of problems. Church camp had some of the worst kids, y'all, just so you know. If you've worked at Cross Point's church camp, you know this. Am I telling it right? Whew, Lord Jesus, help us. The kids, man, they're crazy, I'm telling you. Talented, but crazy. So I'm about 9 years old, and so most of my family's originally from Florida, and I just went to church camp during that summer in Georgia, and the state of Florida, who has their own camping ministry, called my dad and asked if he wanted to come work at one of their camps. And it just so happened that it was the same age that I was, and he was like, you want to go to camp again in Florida? I was like, heck yeah, that's awesome. 2 camps? That's like getting 2 pieces of pizza for free, you know? That's a good time. So, and plus, on top of that, like one of my cousins was going. I was going to get to stay in a cabin with him. It was going to be a good time. So I think my dad ended up being the evangelist that week. So we went to Brooksville, Florida. Now, you've been to Brooksville? Yeah. Just out of curiosity, we took the youth group to Universal Studios a few years ago. How many of y'all, was anybody in the room that was on that trip? Okay, do y'all remember the campground we stayed at? Okay, was that in the middle of nowhere? Okay, this was the camp that I went to. Okay, now when you think of Florida, a lot of people think of alligators and it being hot and all that kind of stuff. True. Also, I think of big trees with moss hanging down. That's this campground. Trees everywhere. In the daytime, looks cool. At nighttime, it's scary. Like scary. They didn't have lights out there. And we went like 3-4 years ago, and they still haven't decided to put lights up out there. So what happened was we decided, we were like, it's not too far from Orlando, and it'll save us a lot of money on the hotel expense. So we took our youth group there, and these teenagers were scared, okay? So one night, it's getting about halfway through camp. We're having a good time. Everything's going well. And some of the guy counselors get together. You got to remember, we're 9, 10 years old at the time. They're like, we have what we're going to call a test of manhood that we're going to do this coming Friday night. And I was like, okay, I feel like I'm brave, They're like, Friday night, we're not going to tell you what we're going to do. But I want you to there was a softball field out there. I use that term loosely because there was one plate out there. There's a softball field. I want you to meet us at home plate at 9 o'clock. Cool, I got it, no problem. So we don't know what's going to happen. So all week we're going along a few days, and I'm thinking about it and kind of hyping it up, and sure enough, 9 o'clock rolls around. Now, when I tell you that it gets to another level of dark in this place, I'm not joking. Like, there's nothing for like 10 miles around, and whenever, like, if I'm standing right here and it's dark there, I couldn't see Josh where he's at. It's that dark in this place. So we're all standing out on home plate. There was probably 50 or 60 guys at the camp, and about 25 of us showed up to home plate, ready to show how much men we were. So we get there, and they're like, look, this is what you got to do. We're going to do this one guy at a time. You're going to stand on home plate. You have to walk all the way to the outfield, and there was one fence in the outfield, and I think it was just to keep the wildlife from running into the open field there. Okay, there's on that fence, we have tied a bunch of flags. If you can walk down there, grab the flag, untie it, walk it back, you're a man. I was like, I got this. This ain't nothing, right? So I was about halfway in the pack of guys going, and sure enough, one after another. And what's really scary about it when you're like 9 years old is you'd see, about 10 guys go, and you'd see them, and then they just disappear. And you're like, And then you'd hear, ah! And you'd see them running back as fast as they could. And, at this point, I'm like, okay, what is going on down out by this fence, right? So finally, it's my turn. I'm like, these are a bunch of chickens. Like, I don't understand what could be so bad. So I'm walking, and so I started getting spiritual at this point. I'm like, we had learned some song that I kind of liked, and I'm humming. I'm like, Jesus is on my side on this walk. He's walking with me. I remember I got to the fence, right, to the fence. And what's really bad is you can turn around and look, and you see nothing behind you. Get to the fence, and I go to reach out, and I hear something moving behind the fence. And I'm like, that thing you do where you get real still, like it's not going to get you? I'm just... And I remember staying like in one position for like a good 45 seconds. And I was like, all right, I'm good. And I go to reach and grab the thing, and something grabs my arm, okay? When I tell you that this fat boy could run, I was booking it back, okay? Now, my dad was there. He lies about this. He says that I didn't run back to home plate. I ran all the way back to our cabin. That's not true. That's not true. I may have peed on myself a little bit, but I went back to home plate. But that was probably the single most terrifying moment of my life, because I thought I was getting ate by a bear or something. Something crazy was going on. And then come to find out, they had the stupid counselors were in the woods, jumping out and grabbing people and scaring us. And, I think I was the most brave. I think I made it the furthest. That's what I told everybody. Nobody made it, though, just so you know. We all were a bunch of chickens. But how many of you have ever let fear keep you from doing something in your life, hold you back from doing something? Fear, doesn't matter how old you get, how much time goes on, how much life experience you get, there's always going to be fear that creeps into some area of your life, and it'll grab a hold of you. And like what it did for me, it'll just stop you dead in your tracks. You'll just freeze and don't know what to do. But fear, if I was going to give, for the context of this message today, give it a definition, it would be this. Fear is the byproduct of our ability to accumulate knowledge and project into the future. So think about it like this. Because of the amount of knowledge that we have gained and you have life experience, if you didn't have that, there would be nothing really to be scared about if you logically think about it, right? Like if you got something coming up, some big event in your life, if you didn't have previous experiences and information about things that were possibly going to happen, there'd be no reason to be scared. It's kind of like this. I really like going to the beach. I'm one of these people, I like getting in the ocean. I like going out, like really deep. I get it, there's sharks, okay? What I don't like is when I'm watching TV and they start telling me the things that can eat the sharks that are also in the ocean, right? And I'm like, no, flip the channel. The more I know, the less likely I am to get my butt in the water, right? I'm like, I know there's plenty of stuff that can kill me. I don't need to know specifics. The more knowledge I have of what can eat me in the ocean, the less likely I am to get in to the ocean. And one of the things in the Bible, there is so many times that Jesus spoke on fear. So what I'm going to do today is we're going to kind of go through a series of a span of time. And what happens a lot of times when people take the words of Jesus about fear, I'm not saying they use them incorrectly, they use them correctly, but I'm one of these people, I like context. I like broad context. As much context as I can get, I really appreciate. Sometimes people will take a scripture out of the Bible where Jesus talks about fear, and they'll use it, and it'll be used correctly, but I like the big picture. I like the whole story. And if we were going to summarize Jesus' words on fear, it would be this. It would just be, fear not, right? Fear not. Okay, you guys good? Y'all can go home. I said, just stop being afraid. Easier said than done, right? Just fear not. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about, it's probably, historians kind of speculate how long the period of time was. Some people say it's a couple months. Some people say weeks. But I'm going to talk to you about Jesus and his disciples a little bit, mainly because the disciples remind me of Cross Point Church. It's a lot of crazy people with a lot of problems. We got our issues, but hey, we're trying to follow Jesus, right? We're trying. But basically, anywhere Jesus went, there was a big crowd of people, right? He drew a crowd. And out of that big crowd of people that were following Jesus, the disciples kind of came to the forefront, and Jesus decided he wanted these guys to follow him. And one of the things early on Jesus told these guys is he was like, look, I just want you to know, okay, you're going to be ridiculed a lot if you follow me. There's going to be some bad things happen. You're going to be like a lamb thrown to the wolves. And for us, you know, we've heard that saying before. Most everybody's heard that saying. But for them, that was like an actual thing they had seen. Okay, we just think of it as a metaphor. They had actually seen that, and they're like, whoa, what, excuse me? Come again? He's like, yeah, look, you're probably going to be beaten, you know, you're going to be exiled. You could die. Hey, but nothing to be afraid of, man. Nothing to be afraid of. Fear not. Fear not. It's going to be all right. So Jesus liked to do these things, and this is one of the things that I liked about school, besides lunch and PE, was Jesus kind of liked to do field trips with the disciples. And there was a series of events that he did where he was really trying to just pound home the idea that there's no reason to fear. So this is what it says, Matthew 8:23. Jesus, then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. They're following him. They're following Jesus wherever he went, right? Verse 24, suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake so that the waves swept over the boat. Now, in that area, in that time, they were used to bad storms coming up, okay? They were used to storms that would roll through. I'm from Florida. If anybody lived in Florida or anything like that, raise your hand if you're from Florida or whatever. It can be the most beautiful day, and it's probably going to rain at some point in Florida, okay? And people that never been to Florida, you go there and you're like, they see a little bit of rain, you're like, man, this day is going to be terrible. And now give it 10 minutes, it'll be really hot again. It'll be perfectly clear. Kind of the same idea with this particular area. They were used to storms rolling in, and it uses the term, it was a furious storm. It was a big, big storm. All right, now, I don't know if you've ever been caught on a boat in a storm. Anybody ever been caught on a boat in a storm? It's pretty scary. It's not fun. Whenever I'm speaking and I'm researching stuff for a message, I like to sit back when I'm reading scripture and try to really put myself in that time, what it would be like. And I've been on a few cruises before. I like cruises. Cruises are fun. It's all you can eat food. That's what most of my life centers around is food. We're going to Disney World next month, and I told him, I was like, I'm just going for the food. Okay, there's going to be lots of good food. But I've always had fun on cruises. But there was one night I remember, and we always went on the big boats. There's levels of cruise boat sizes. You get on a little one, the smaller it is, the more you can feel the ocean moving. You get on a real big one, and you get lucky, and there's not any problems out at sea, and you'll barely notice that you're on a boat. I was on a boat one night, one of the biggest ones they had. We were sitting down after dinner, and I'm not a motion sick person, but we're sitting down, we had eaten dinner. We go to this big theater where they're doing a play or a musical or something. I remember sitting down, and you're sitting still, and it feels like you're doing this. And I'm sitting there going, all right, this ain't good. This is not good, because this big boat, I can feel it moving really bad. So I decided after the show, I was like, I want to go see what it's like outside. I went outside. If you've ever been outside in a storm in the middle of the ocean, it is so loud. You don't really think about that aspect of it, how loud it is when it's storming on the ocean, but it is so loud. Verse 24, but it says, but Jesus was sleeping. But Jesus was sleeping during all this. I wonder, I think Jesus has a sense of humor. I don't think he was asleep. I think he was faking it. Could be wrong. That's just me. But if it was such a furious storm, I wonder if he was just down there I wonder if they're ever going to come get me. You ever fake being asleep when somebody comes in the room? Yeah, everybody's done that. I wonder. I'm going to ask him one day, whenever I get to heaven. That's going to be my one question. Was you really asleep? All the things you could ask. But Jesus was sleeping at the bottom of the boat during this furious storm. Verse 25, the disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us, we're going to drown. Now, I don't think that they went up to him like you go to your child when you wake them up and, hey, Jesus, hey, would you mind waking up? I have a feeling they went down and were yelling because they thought they were about to die. You know, they thought they were about to die, and Jesus acting like he was asleep. You know, I kind of picture him kind of rolling over. You know how you can like turn your back to the door when you're sleeping? Y'all know what I'm talking about. Don't act like I'm stupid. Y'all have all done this. You hear somebody coming in, you kind of roll over and don't want them to know I'm actually awake. You know, Jesus probably, had his face away from them as they walk in. Oh, turn around. That's what goes on in my head. I picture things like this. Jesus kind of sat up. In verse 26, he replied, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid? Why are you so afraid? What you scared of? I done told you, you know, things, you follow me, things are going to get kind of rough. There's going to be a lot of weird things that happen when you come around me. What are you so afraid of?" After a little while, it doesn't say he immediately got up. It says, then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. Verse 27, the men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." Now, that is one of the most important questions that any of us can still ask today. What kind of man is this? There's really no greater question that you can ask. If you're not a believer, if you are a believer, what kind of man do you think Jesus was? And I have to think that, you know, they were scared that they were going to die. Imagine, I was thinking about it this way, like, wouldn't it kind of scare you even more when you saw a dude make everything just calm down? I'd be like, we're out in the middle of the ocean. We can't get away from this guy. I'm just being honest. That'd be weird. And be like, that was cool. I'm going to go over here on this side of the boat, right? And most people believe this. Most people believe that Peter, one of the 12 disciples, was actually illiterate. I mean, if you read anything about Peter, you can tell he wasn't the brightest person, right? But they believe that he was illiterate, and they believe that his account is actually what Mark wrote. So most people believe that Peter told Mark what happened with Jesus, all his accounts of Jesus, everything that happened, and he transcribed everything that Peter said. And this was the words of Peter in Mark 4:41. He said that they feared a great fear. They feared a great fear. Like, does that make any sense? They feared a great fear? Okay, so basically we were scared, and then we got scared even more. They feared a great fear. And like I said, I'm going to assume that they were scared they were going to die, and then they were a little bit overwhelmed by Jesus. For a moment, their confidence in Jesus hopefully overwhelmed their fear, right? So a few days go on. This field trip was not very much of a success. Jesus was always trying to teach lessons to the disciples. And I don't think that he probably felt too good that they passed the test, you know. A few days later, he's talking to the disciples, and this is what he says, Matthew 10:28. "Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell." And I'm not trying to put words in Jesus' mouth here, but basically what he's saying to me is, don't be afraid of anything that can just kill your body. What are you going to be afraid of that for? Why would you have fear of something that can do something to your physical body? If you're going to fear something, you should fear God. You should fear something that can damage your physical soul or has control of your spiritual soul. And the disciples, you know, they're not the smartest bunch of guys. Some of them are smarter than others, obviously. But Jesus, he's like, I don't think they're getting it. You know, I don't think they're understanding what I'm trying to say. And so he tries to make it a little bit more personal. Verse 29, he says this, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny?" And we're like, I don't know. That's a very specific and odd reference there. I guess sparrows cost a penny. Okay, "Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care." Has anybody ever heard the song, "His Eyes on the Sparrow"? Old hymn. Quick, see who gives the right answer. Who does the best rendition of "His Eyes on the Sparrow"? There is a correct answer. No. There's one correct answer. Huh? It's Marvin Gaye, y'all. Come on. Marvin Gaye sings the best rendition of "His Eyes on the Sparrow." Go home and listen to that today. I remember growing up in church and you hear a lot of the old hymns and stuff like that. I remember hearing that one as a kid. I'm like, why are we singing about sparrows? Like, it does not make any sense to me. And then you actually start reading the Bible. Oh, okay, I got you now. Makes a little bit of sense. But basically, he's saying, look, guys, God actually, he cares about even the littlest thing like a sparrow. He can see what's going on with the sparrow. How much more do you think he cares for you? How much more does he watch over you? How much more does he love you, right? Verse 30, 31. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Some of us, the number's going down. My dad's number's going way down. He's not here. I got to say something about him. Even the very hairs on your head are all numbered, so don't be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. You're worth so much more than many sparrows. So why, if God cares so much even about the littlest sparrow, obviously he's going to try to watch out for you. He's got his eye on you. What are you so afraid of? A little bit more time goes on. The disciples, they still aren't really getting it. Jesus decides we're going to go on another field trip. He liked field trips, right? We're going to go on another field trip, and they're following Jesus, and Jesus is preaching one day, and there's a big crowd as usual, keeps coming up. Jesus always drew a crowd, and Jesus this particular day got a little long-winded, apparently. Okay, he was the first preacher to get long-winded. Okay, I'm not long-winded. I'm 35 minutes or less every single time. But Jesus got a little long-winded. The disciples, they came up to Jesus, and they were like, hey, just want to let you know, it's been a long time. There's like thousands of people here, and they're probably really hungry. We probably need to send them home. You think we could, dismiss? Can we dismiss service? We need to send them home because we don't have food here. And you know the story. He takes a little boy's lunch, some fish and some loaves of bread. Jesus goes to the disciples like, here, this is all we need right here. Go feed the people. And sure enough, they go, and it just keeps multiplying and multiplying. And at this point in time, the disciples, they are like on cloud nine. If you were to talk to them that day, they'd be like, yeah, nothing new really, just performing miracles out here, feeding the thousands of people with just a few loaves of bread and fish, and it's just what we do. It's just what we do. And they're riding on cloud nine, they're feeling good, and before the crowd dissipates, Jesus goes, he's like, hey, he kind of breaks away from the crowd, gets the disciples off to the side. He's like, hey, why don't y'all go get in this boat, Matthew 14:22. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat. Now, I'm going to guess there was a little hesitation about getting in the boat. They're probably like, last time we got in a boat with you, did not go very well. Did not go well. I think about this, my mind it goes all over the place, but I have a bunch of dogs in my house. I have a German Shepherd named Heidi. My wife named her Heidi Klum because she's German and she's beautiful. So she named her Heidi Klum. We call her Heidi. And I don't know if you've ever been around German Shepherds, but those are some smart dogs. They're so smart. Heidi is very protective of us. She's very protective of our house. And she doesn't, if we're home, she wants to be inside with us. She wants to know where we're at all times. If we're gone and we put her out in the backyard, she's good. She knows that's her yard. She's going to protect the yard. But we kind of have this problem sometimes where if I'm trying to leave and she doesn't know if I'm leaving or not, and she thinks I might be just going outside or something, she tries to hide from me. So she'll go get in. We have a crate downstairs, and she'll go get in the crate, and it's one of the biggest ones, and she'll get in the very back of it so I can't reach her, right? And I'm like, this dog, man, like, she'll usually listen to you, but if she thinks you're leaving, she don't want you to put her out. I'm like, man, I'm going to have to outsmart this dog. So I remember the first time I did this, if she hears whenever we have a Vivint alarm system, so when you open the door, it makes that dong, dong noise, and she's automatically going to run to the front door, see what's going on, look outside, make sure nothing's messing with her house. So I decided, I was like, she goes and gets in that pen, and I'm trying to leave. I was like, she ain't going to come out. So I was like, I'm going to trick her. So I go, and I open the door real quick, and I go hide around the corner. And sure enough, she comes running out, and she runs by me, and I grab her by the collar. I was like, I got you. I take her outside, right? Next day, same thing. She wouldn't come out. I was like, all right, I got you. Same thing, open the door, go behind the corner, I hear tit-tit-tit. She stops. And no lie, this dog peers its head around the corner and sees me and is like, not today, and runs back in the pen. That's kind of how I picture the disciples. They're like, no, you're not fooling me again. I'm not getting on this boat again. I'm not getting on this boat. I'm just not doing it, okay? So Jesus, he puts them on the boat. He wants them to go on ahead of them to the other side while he was going to handle the rest of the crowd, right? So a few hours go by, and the disciples, they're just in the middle of the lake on the boat, just chilling out there, wondering where Jesus is just taking his sweet time. Has anybody ever been at church and they dismissed and your significant other just wants to talk to everybody? You ever had that happen? Yeah. It's usually you that wants to talk to everybody. But I kind of picture it that way. They're just out there like, where's Jesus? Where is Jesus? And Matthew 14:25, shortly before dawn, so right before it's getting dark, Jesus went out to them walking on the water, on the lake. Now, we're going to stop right here. I want to tell you about a scholarly type of use that people talk about a lot. It's called the criteria of embarrassment, okay? It's an actual thing. So if you know anything about the criteria of embarrassment, what it says is historical documents, usually they're not going to be written by somebody, or somebody is not going to give a story that embarrasses them, right? They don't want to make themselves look bad. For example, so during Roman times, you were not going to find any Roman historian that wrote negative words about the Caesar. You know what would happen if they did? They would die. Okay, so the Caesars and everybody that were in power, they pretty much controlled the narrative of what was written about them. So you don't really hear anything bad written by the people of those times. But right here, this is kind of the pushback that a lot of people have with Christianity. So Jesus walking out on the bow of the boat and making the wind and waves calm down, some people can be like, all right, that could be just a coincidence. Like, storms roll through fast. It could just be he got lucky, you know. And right here, whenever they start talking about Jesus actually walking on water, they're like, no, that's where it ends for me. That's where it ends for me. I just can't believe that. But what kind of draws people back in, if you actually are reading the scripture, is this next verse, verse 26. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. Why would they make themselves look so stupid? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, when I think about that story I told you at the beginning, why would I make that up? That's embarrassing to me. I think I peed my pants. Okay? Why would I make that up? Why would they admit that they were terrified and thought Jesus was a ghost? Because it most likely happened just like they said, right? Verse 27, but Jesus immediately said to them, take courage, it is I. Hey guys, it's me. Chill out, calm down, it's me. And once again, they keep failing the test. And you know, this kind of brings me a little bit of comfort because I think about the fact that they were with Jesus all the time. And they still, no matter how many times he said, there's no reason to be afraid, they still kept being afraid. Yeah. They were constantly still living their life in fear. They just weren't quite getting it. So it makes me feel a little bit better whenever I'm scared about things that I shouldn't be scared about. You know, there's so many things in my life that I'll worry about, things in the future, and how many of y'all can just sit there and come up with just scenarios? And like you'll make yourself physically sick? I used to do that. I don't do it as much. I just try not to think about things. But I'd sit there and I'd think about stuff in my mind and just make myself physically sick, worrying about what was going to happen. And at this point in time, even though they had failed the test, they were back in it, you know. They were like, okay, this man's walking on water. He's controlling the wind, the waves. He's controlling the weather. Like, this is the real deal. Later on, just a few days later, he rides into the city on a donkey. It's like a little parade. Like, the disciples at this point, they're probably like, he's going to be the king. He is going to be the actual king. And they're sitting down at the Last Supper. They didn't realize it was going to be the Last Supper. And Jesus is talking to them. He's like, look, we got a new covenant. I'm creating a new covenant with you. This is going to be a new movement and a new command. A new command I'm going to give you to love one another. Just love everybody. And they got to be they're so excited. They're like, man, we're excited. This is incredible. They're at an all-time high. And then just a few hours later, he's arrested. And boom, just like that. Scared. Everything that just happened, it didn't happen. They're scared once again. Just with one thing happening, they're scared. It didn't take much. Just the slightest change in plan of what they thought was going to happen, and fear jumped right back in. And then a few days goes by. He's beaten, he's killed, and they saw this. Most of them from a distance, because they were cowards. They were scared to have any association. They didn't want anybody to know that they had any association with Jesus. They got as far away as they could because they were scared. They had fear. 3 days later, they peer into an empty tomb, look around, and then the next thing you know, their friend who they watched die on a cross is in front of them, and just like that, they're back in the game again. They're back in the game. There's no more fear in our hearts. Now, I'm going to tell you, we've said before, what would it take for you to believe that Jesus was the Son of God if he was your brother? We talk about James sometimes. And I can assure you, if every single person in here, if you saw somebody get crucified, killed, and then they're back a few days later and you actually watched it, it don't matter what they say, I'm 100% on board. Yeah. I'm following you. I'm never going to doubt you again. Yeah. Because, let's be honest, we would probably have a little bit of doubts about making the wind and the waves calm down. That could, we can explain that, maybe. But walking on the water, maybe it was a sandbar. It was a sandbar out there. But I watched him die. And he's standing in front of me right now. He's standing right in front of me. After that point, they feared not. They feared not anymore. And fear not changed the world. Right. Fear not changed the world. Fear not changed the world then, and it can change the world now. That's right. Think about all the things in your life that have scared you to the point of you not taking steps forward in your life. And we can do this on any level of your life. You can do it spiritually, personally, relationally, whatever. There's been fear in your life that has kept you from moving forward. Got real quiet. It happens to me all the time. There's things that happen in my life, and I feel like I should take a step, and I don't because I get scared. It's so easy to let fear control your life. There's been times where you've probably been at work. And let's be honest, this is an easy church to invite people to. We're not a bunch of weirdos. I mean, we're kind of weird. But if somebody comes to this church, they're going to feel welcome. It's a very welcoming crowd. People are friendly. We may do some weird things, but they can usually get past it because, the preachers are very nice looking and the people are friendly. But we are a very welcoming church, but there's been times that even me, working at this church, where I've been in public and I felt an opportunity to invite somebody and I didn't. You ever been there? Yeah. Felt an opportunity to invite somebody and I was like, I don't want to have that conversation. I was a little scared of how the conversation would go. Just even the smallest thing like that, fear can creep into our lives. Fear not changed the world. And from that point on, Christians were fearless. The people that had seen Jesus die and come back, they were fearless. And during those times, obviously, a lot of us, historically that Christians were persecuted. They were killed. They were used in the Colosseum. They were mutilated, fed to animals, lions, everything like that. And one of the very strange things about that time period is medical advancement kind of halted during that period, because the Romans had this thing, it's kind of odd, but you couldn't examine a dead body, okay? You couldn't do like autopsies, those kind of things. But they had a weird loophole. Most people don't know this. But if you could find a dying body, you could examine the body until it died. Then it was off limits. So Greek physicians, they would actually stay in the Colosseum whenever Christians were being killed, and they would run out while they were dying and examine their bodies. Okay? One of the most famous Greek physicians, his name was Claudius Galenus, and this is what he had examined thousands of Christians. And one of the things that he said, this is him talking about Christians directly. This was his quote on Christians. For fearlessness of death and the hereafter is something we witness in them every day. Even in the face of death, they are literally dying, bleeding to death on the Colosseum floor, and they can see that there is no fear in them. You know why? Because they had seen the one who had been killed and resurrected. They knew that everything that he told them was the truth. There was no reason to fear. It took a while. It took a lot of field trips. It took a lot of lessons for them to understand that there was no reason to fear. And Christians today, we don't really stack up when it comes to that area compared to them, obviously. I get so scared of some of the dumbest things. And I prepare for a message like this, and you sit back and you start thinking about all the things in my life that I've let fear just control. Fear has controlled so many areas of my life, and I'm willing to bet fear has controlled your lives too. I want you to understand right now that fear can just run your life. Fear not can change your world and our world in general. So today, I want you to embrace fear not. There's no reason to be scared. Would you stand with me? If you would, bow your heads and close your eyes. Lord, I thank you for this group of people that are here today. I pray, Lord, I know it's kind of a tough message when it's one of those that you kind of look on the inside because it's something that everybody struggles with. Anybody that says that they're never scared, they have a lying problem. Fear will take over even at the most simple times in our lives. We can be going about our everyday routine, and fear can just sometimes just grip us to the point where we can't move. We just freeze in our tracks. But God, you've told us over and over, you've shown us over and over there's nothing to be scared of. If your eye is on the sparrow and your eye is watching even the most tiny things in this world, and you care about those things, how much more do you care about us? How much more are you watching over us? God, I pray, Lord, in this time as we get ready to sing this last song, that you open up our eyes, that we can see the areas of our life that we've let fear just take over. And I pray that you break that down. Help us as we move forward from today, that fear no longer has a grip on our life. And we'll thank you for it. In Jesus' name, amen.